If you want legendary service,
if you want sweeter discounts, try bundling with insurance. See what it's all about. Switch to insurance. For your car and house.
Get a quote and save by bundling auto and home with
insurance.
Legendary Academy Award-winning director Oliver Stone is back with Nuclear Now, his first film in 7 years, coming exclusively to theaters across the USA and Canada beginning on April 28th. Based on the book A Bright Future, written by award-winning scholar of international relations, Professor Joshua S. Goldstein, who also co-wrote the film, Nuclear Now explores the possibility for the global community to overcome the challenges of climate change and energy poverty to reach a brighter future through the power of nuclear energy, an option that may become the only viable way to ensure our continued survival sooner than we think. With unprecedented access to the nuclear industry in France, Russia, and the United States, director Oliver Stone delivers a revolutionary documentary the Variety is called an intensely compelling must-see film. Opens in New York and Los Angeles on April 28th, with special one-day screening events across North America on Nuclear Now Day, May 1st, that you won't want to miss. Visit nuclearnowfilm.com to learn more.
Hi, and welcome to Your Health Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
On this show, we highlight the latest vital health news, discoveries that affect your body and your mind. Every episode, we dive into one topic. We discuss diseases, treatments, and some controversies.
And we demystify the medical research in ways you can use to stay healthy. I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
We're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today, we're talking about coffee. We hear a lot of conflicting findings about whether our favorite beverage is good or bad for our health. But recently, an especially rigorous study came out that may finally answer some of our percolating questions.
There's a good chance that right now you're sipping the very thing we're talking about: coffee. It is one of the most widely consumed beverages in the entire world.
It's true. Here in the US, the average person drank almost 89 gallons of coffee in 2016, more than soda, tea, and juice combined.
That's a lot of Java, or Joe, brew, or jitter juice, whatever you like to call it.
Indeed. Do you drink coffee, Josh?
Actually, I guess I'm one of the few people who doesn't. I used to guzzle it, though, about 4 to 5 cups a day, but I gave it up a few years ago.
Why? What happened?
Honestly, my stomach started getting upset. I figured I could do without so much acid, you know?
That totally makes sense. But personally, I'm not really functional until I've had my morning cup of coffee, and I don't know if I could give that up.
There are times when I catch the aroma from a coffee shop and it just smells so good. But listen, I'm still not sure that coffee was causing my problems. It feels like every day there's a new study telling us coffee is good for us or bad for us for a whole bunch of different reasons. With all these conflicting messages, it can really feel like whiplash.
Well, it turns out it's actually really hard to study how coffee or any other food or drink affects our health. Most nutrition studies are observational studies, which compare health outcomes in people who, say, happen to drink coffee to those who don't. But it's impossible to rule out other variables that could affect what you're trying to measure. Plus, you have to rely on people reporting what they consumed weeks or months after they drank it. And most of us can't even remember what we had for breakfast.
So what's the solution? Is there another way to study this?
Well, there is a way to be more objective. I talked to
Gregory Marcus, professor of medicine and cardiologist at University of California, San Francisco.
Marcus and his colleagues took a different approach than most other coffee studies. Instead of just studying people who drank coffee or didn't, he set up a randomized trial to study coffee's impact on your heartbeat. They were looking for abnormal heart rhythms called arrhythmias.
The topic comes up very frequently in my clinic, where patients with various arrhythmias will ask if they can consume coffee. There's this conventional wisdom that coffee increases the risk for heart rhythm disturbances or electrical problems with the heart, which is my clinical subspecialty. And yet we and others in conducting recent observational studies generally have failed to find a clear association between coffee and arrhythmias.
In their new study, Marcus and his colleagues randomly assigned 100 people to either drink or not drink coffee each day for a period of 2 weeks.
And they received these instructions via text message. They were randomly assigned to either go ahead and drink all the coffee you want versus on other random days, avoid all caffeine today.
They had participants wear a heart monitor, a Fitbit, and a continuous glucose monitor. They also had them download an app on their phone that collected GPS location data so the researchers could see when people were actually visiting coffee shops.
With the heart monitors, what were they looking at?
They were measuring two things: the number of what are called premature atrial contractions and premature ventricular contractions.
It's very common for everyone to have an early beat arising from the upper chambers of the heart called premature atrial contractions or PACs once in a while.
But research has shown that having too many of these beats puts you at risk of atrial fibrillation, which is a dangerously irregular rapid heartbeat. This is associated with a very high risk for stroke, dementia, and death. Then there's the other kind of irregular heartbeat.
Premature ventricular contractions are early beats that arise from the lower chambers of the heart. Again, we all have those sometimes, but those with more are at higher risk of developing heart failure or a weakening of the heart.
They found that drinking coffee did not result in more premature atrial contractions, the early heartbeats associated with atrial fibrillation. That's good news for people who were worried about that.
That is reassuring. But what about the other bad beats, the premature contractions in the heart's lower chambers?
Those were slightly more common on days when people were told to drink coffee, or on days when they drank more coffee, but not enough to be really worrisome. And that's not all they found. Coffee consumption was also associated with a higher number of daily steps. On days when people drank coffee, and the more coffee they drank, the more steps they took.
On days randomized to coffee, people took on average about 1,000 more steps, which is highly significant. And in fact, that difference in average steps has been associated with improved longevity in large epidemiologic studies.
The study couldn't show why people increased their steps on days when they drank coffee. Maybe they were just walking to the coffee shop or the bathroom more. But regardless, an extra 1,000 steps per day has been linked to a 6 to 15% lower risk of death in other studies.
So coffee might actually make people perk up and move around.
Yep, I guess the coffee drinkers were full of beans. But there was a downside to drinking coffee, and it probably won't surprise you.
Let me guess. People slept less.
Bingo. The study participants got about half an hour less sleep on average on the days they drank coffee compared with the days they didn't. But the results varied a lot from person to person depending on whether they were fast or slow coffee metabolizers, which is determined by your genetics. The researchers gave participants a genetic saliva test to determine which type of coffee metabolizer they were.
The fast caffeine metabolizers, as inferred from their genetics, actually exhibited no significant relationship between coffee consumption and sleep, whereas the slow caffeine metabolizers exhibited the worst effects on sleep. In fact, the slow caffeine metabolizers on average had almost an hour less sleep when they were exposed to coffee.
I never had an issue with sleep when I was drinking a lot of coffee, but I wake up at a ridiculously early hour in the morning. I'm talking 5 o'clock, so I'm usually zonked by 10 p.m. anyway.
Yeah, I don't usually find that coffee keeps me up at night either, but I try not to have caffeine after about 3 or 4 p.m. Still, this study has me wondering if I should quit drinking it earlier in the day.
If someone suffers from insomnia, we have found here in a randomized trial that there are meaningful effects on sleep to such a degree that it really should motivate a good trial off of coffee to really try to tackle insomnia.
Okay, that part is pretty much a no-brainer, but overall the study does seem like fairly positive news for those who enjoy their brew.
Yeah, it is pretty good news. It confirms other observational studies that have not shown a higher risk of heart arrhythmias. And some studies have shown that drinking coffee is linked with a lower lifetime risk of diabetes and death overall, which could be a result of the higher activity levels that drinking coffee might produce. In the end, there may not be a simple answer to the question of whether coffee is good or bad for you. It depends on how much you consume, and each person is different.
On the whole, these data should be generally reassuring regarding the safety of coffee. But one of the challenges in conducting nutrition-based research is that there tends to be a kind of a natural hunger, especially from the media, but I think this is just human nature, to conclude, okay, is this good for me or is this bad for me? Which one is it? It's one or the other. And the reality is that the effects of coffee are complicated.
Coffee affects each person differently, so if drinking coffee makes you feel bad, skip it. But if, like me, you enjoy it in moderation, go ahead and have that latte.
Your Health Quickly is produced and edited by Kelso Harper, Talika Bose, and Jeff Delvisio. Our music is composed by Dominic Smith.
Our show is part of Scientific American's podcast, Science Quickly. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to go to SciAm.com for updated and in-depth health news.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.